Today we're going to be making envelopes for your chunky cards. Hello and welcome to Debbie J's Crafting Corner. I'm Debbie and I want to help you unlock your creative potential. Each week I show you how you can create awesome cards and other crafty projects, because if I can make it, you can too. So if you'd like to see more tutorials and inspirational videos, be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the little bell to be notified every time I upload a new video. This video is a little long, so I have left some timestamps down in the description to each of the different ways we're going to be making some envelopes today. So how do you mail a chunky card? This card is one that I made that is actually a light up card, so it's got a little battery in there and it is a little thick because of the foam tape. And if you notice, this is a regular A2 size card, A2 size envelope. I believe this is one of the ones I picked up at Hobby Lobby. It's a Paper Studio envelope. And when I try to put it in there, it just will not fit. So I did get this question from one of my friends over in our Crafting with Debbie Facebook group, and that is a very, very valid question, because when you're making cards, sometimes you do go a little overboard. I do it all the time, and make it a little thicker than what you want it to be. Now, to go through the mail and be accepted, as long as it's not more than 1/4 inch, you're good to go. They'll accept those without additional postage, but you may want to add a little extra anyway, just to be on the safe side. So I've got some envelopes from, again, I said Hobby Lobby, and I've got my envelopes from Michael's, and they're both basically the same size. I can check this one too and just double check. I'm almost positive this will not fit in this envelope either. And no, it will not fit in that envelope. It is just too big. It's basically the height of the card is just under how much extra space you have, but when you take into consideration the thickness on it, it just won't work on that. So what do? Now, you could go and buy more envelopes, or if you're like me, you have a lot of cardstock laying around, so you've got plenty of paper to be able to make some more envelopes with. So the first thing we're going to do is see if we can make a template out of one of those envelopes that we know are too small. So first I'm going to try to gently take it apart. And there are, of course, plenty of templates online. Any templates that I make for you guys today, I will go ahead and share those over on my blog, so you can have access to those as well if you'd like. Okay, so now we've basically got an envelope we can't use anymore, but we've also got a basic shape that we're going to need for a template. So I'm going to just take another piece of paper, and it would just take this envelope. Basically you would use an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper or cardstock for that. And I'm going to go ahead and just draw around the parts that we know are about right. Okay. So this is my thought on making this big enough to fit that card. First off, we know that my card is about 1/4 inch thick. Could be a little bit larger. I'm going to go ahead and put down this where the score line is supposed to be, and that's going to be right between the two places of the flap. Actually, what I think we would probably want to do is make this a little bit wider, and that should give us plenty of space. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come back on here. So we know we've already got this side pretty much drawn. Let me go ahead and draw the last lines, because I rethought that little bit there. And I am not good at tracing things. Now you know why I like my tools and my paper trimmers and my dies and my scan and cut and all that good stuff. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically move it over a little bit. I want it to have at least an extra 1/2 inch of space. So this part here, I'm going to just line it up with the edge of my mat so I can see exactly where the measurements are. So that right there, I line everything up there, okay. And then I'm going to slide it over a little bit just so it's going to be on the inch mark. And that way I can see how much more I want to go. So I'm going to want to go, I'm going to give it extra space on this side. So first, because I don't want anything shifting around, I'm going to tape this to my mat with some washi tape, just to be on the safe side. Now on this side, going to that same spot, it comes to this mark, basically this mark here. You can probably see it. I'm going to go over about a 1/2 inch further. So there's a 1/4, that's a 1/2. Actually, I think I'm going to go, I'll give it extra and go 3/4. No, that's going to be too big. Let's try it first time with just an extra 1/2 inch. So this is where I want my score line to be. Now I'm going to take my template and then move that score line, basically move the edge over to where that score line is, line it up at the top again, and just draw this thing a little bit bigger by going around this part. Okay, so now I'm going to cut out my new template. Okay, so now that is all cut out. Next, I'm going to just grab my scoring tool. Got my EK Success scoreboard that I use all the time, and I'm just going to go ahead and score on each of the spots that we know it needs it. So I'm going to line up this corner with that edge, make sure it's at the right spot. Okay, so those are those 2 flaps that we're folding. So just placing the card into this piece, I can already tell that it's got enough space to fit there. So that is a plus on the first part. Now I need to make sure that I can close everything up and have it still fit. So I'm going to still do additional scoring on this. Between those 2 lower flaps, or the position of the lower flap, go ahead and score there, and do the same thing on the other side. And then fold that up. And this doesn't look real pretty, but this one could be just the template that you start off with. And you could make it out of cardstock if you want it to be more durable. So we know that the way that the envelope was initially, we had these flaps folded in, and then this part over the top. And they still have that nice little overlap. And then if I hold those in place, actually I'm going to hold them in place with some washi tape, since this is just a test. And you see that that fits just perfectly fine. It does look like we could possibly make it a little bit taller, but either way it's still going to fit and you can still mail it. It is a little bit of a tight snug, so I'm thinking for the template, the same way that we made one of the sides a little longer, I'm thinking we should probably make the top a little taller as well. So that's how you would go about making one from an envelope you've already got. And you could do the same thing if you've got, I've got a second template here from a different design. This one is This is one that I created with my envelope punch board. So if you've received a large envelope, let's say you've gotten something in the mail and you didn't demolish the envelope when you took the card out, if it's one of those chunkier ones, you could take it apart and use that as your template. So I'm going to line up the edge with the edge here so I don't waste any cardstock, and I'm going to add basically about a ½ inch across the top. So I'm just going to draw around my template. Then we're going to cut it out. I do have to say that this is probably the method that would take the most amount of time, but it does not require any additional tools. So the reason that you have the cool additional tools is usually to save you time and to make things just a little bit, I guess a little bit prettier, because it's consistent. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and score this one. Since we're at that point, I'll start with this side since it's about even, I think. And the main reason for the scoring is to try to help you make a straighter fold. Okay, and then to assemble it, to adhere it all together, you would need your double-sided adhesive tape. So I'm going to go ahead and use this 1/4-inch tape from scrapbook.com and just put it right up against the edge on this side. Do that there. Do that same over here. Folding those flaps down again. I'm going to go ahead and burnish them one more time. And then fold it up. So now the envelope should be fine to hold my card. So I can slide that on in, and you see it fits perfectly fine. And then if I put some adhesive on the top here, I'll be able to seal that up and mail it out without a problem. For one. The next method is using your scoreboard. I know we just used it to do the scoring on that. Excuse me. However, this is something you'll want to check when it comes to any of your scoring tools. This specific one had something on it that I did not know about for a very long time. I realized just recently that it has instructions as to how to create an envelope on the back and additional scoring. Now this is a little difficult to work with, but we're going to do it anyway. So let me get out another piece of cardstock. So an A2 size card the finished card is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. The finished envelope should be slightly larger, and it says 4 5/8 by 5 7/8. And to do that, you would need an 8 1/2 by an 8 1/2 piece of paper. Now, the cardstock I have are 8 1/2 by 11. So the next size up is saying to use a 9 by 9. I don't have any 9 by 9 paper, so I'm going to have to try the one that is the A2 size for this. This may just create a standard A2 size card envelope. I don't know that it's going to work for the chunky envelope, but it is another method to make an envelope if you don't have any. So first thing I need to do is cut the excess off of one of these sheets. Since it's 8 1/2 by 11, I need to cut off 2 1/2 inches. And now the next step it says on here to do is to, using the back of the scoring board, align paper with the dotted lines. So there's these little dotted lines that correspond with the envelope size, and score along the labeled groove marks that correspond with the desired envelope size. So we've got these marks that say which score line to use, and which basically it has, these show which score line to use. These show which envelope size, where to line the paper up. So I'm going to get another piece of washi tape, because otherwise this is going to shift on me. So I've got an A2 there and I've got an A2 there, so I'm going to just line those two up. And I'm also noticing that apparently my paper is not exactly 8.5 by 8.5, because it looks like this side here is lined up but this side isn't. But that's still going to be fine. We're going to use the instructions as though the paper were correct. And I do need to move that just a touch. This is my OCD kicking in. Sorry, guys. Okay, so now I need to score where it says A2. So here's one of the marks that says A2. So I need to score here. And then we have another mark here that says A2. I have no idea why it's on the right hand side and not the left. To me it would make more sense to be on the left side. That's okay. And then we have another one here that says A2. Got to mark, go ahead and go across it. And then our last one that says A2. Go ahead and score across there. Okay. The next step would be to cut these little triangles out, because if you try putting it together there, those are going to kind of try to bunch up, and that's not going to be good for your envelope. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those little triangles out. And just because I want to, I'm trying to round the edge just a touch. Okay. So next we just fold on our score lines and burnish those down. And now that we've got it basically folded up, I'm going to test with our chunky card. And let's see if it will go in there. Actually, this is a way that you can make this probably fit. So I put the card in, and it does fit in the space. So at least the space, the rectangle is the right size. So if you fold the pieces over, after the card's in there, you've got an envelope that will fit. The third method is using the Scor-Envy. Now this is made by ScorPal, and it's designed to work with the ScorPal scoring board. I don't have the ScorPal scoring board. Instead, I've got my EK Tools scoring board, mini scoring board that I use mostly because all I make is cards, so I don't need anything really bigger. I have made some other things a little bigger, but usually this one will work. But the way the instructions work, it says for a rectangle card, which is an A2 size, we would want to go with the bigger size, which they've got a 4x6. Actually, I don't think that one is a good one either, because it's only 4 inches tall, and our card is 4 1/4. So this one is only 4 inches. So that one I don't think is going to work. It does have a 4.5 by 6 1/4, but that one says you need a 9-inch piece of paper again. So this is going to be a one that may or may not, it really is going to depend on the size of your card. So for this one, it basically needs you to use it with your scoring board. But the way that the score lines work, it's asking you for 2 3/4. which is somewhere over in this area that's off my scoreboard. So what I wound up doing is pulling out my old scoreboard that I really don't ever use. This is the We Are Memory Keepers scoreboard and paper trimmer. Now the reason I didn't like it too much is I was doing a lot of my measurements, my basic measurements are 5.5 and 4 1/4. So if I'm needing to score at 5.5, it was coming so close to that line there, the fold line, and it wasn't quite sturdy enough that my scoring was usually off. It was not looking so good. So what I'm going to try to do, I'm going to attempt that one that is supposed to be 4x6 and see if it'll work with this card. I mean, maybe the flap will be big enough where we can still use it, but we'll just have to see. So this one needs an 8.5 by 8.5 inch square piece of cardstock. So I'm going to go ahead and measure this down to 8.5 and cut the piece off. And then this flap here makes it so that you have a ridge for your scoring. The scoring tool goes up here. Actually, I think I'm going to use it just a little bit different. I'm going to turn it around and use it on this side, I think. Still going to put it into the grooves there. And this needs to be lined up with the 6-inch mark. Now I can see the 6-inch mark down here. So that is pretty close. Okay. So this is saying for me to score it at 2 can't see it. 2 3/4 and 9 1/4. So let me get that back in the groove there. So I'm going to come over to measurements are here. 2 3/4, so it's going to be scored here. This is another thing. You have to hold the paper pretty steady in order to get your scoring to work because you don't have it actually mounted up against anything. I got 2 3/4, so that's here. And then on this side it says to go for 9 1/4. Okay, then you turn it, line it up again with that 6-inch mark, top and bottom. And the second score lines are at 4 and 8.5. So here's the 4 mark. So I'm going to go ahead and score at 4. And then at 8.5. Okay. And then we'll just need to trim out those little triangles and again fold our cardstock along those score lines. And to be honest, I think I'm not going to cut it on this part because I believe that the measurements that it had on there for a 4x6, you could basically modify that slightly. I'm going to score it again, but I'm going to give it a little bit more space there so that the flap will be where I think it's supposed to be. So I think that instead of being, basically it said to do it was at 4, which is over here on this end, and at 8.5. And I think if you do both sides, like do one side at 8.5, flip it, and then do the other side at 8.5, that'll give you a slightly taller envelope. And that is probably going to give us the size that we need. Now I did try this method earlier to try to get that same size card, and I was wondering why it was just not fitting the way I thought it was, that way I thought it should, and I think that's the reason. It's designed to be a 4x6 and I'm wanting a bigger card than 4 inches. Okay, so again with the, well, no, I'm not going to use the washi tape. I'm going to do like I did last time. I'm going to put my card in the center, and it does fit. If I had left it at 4, you wouldn't have had enough space over the top to be able to close the envelope. So we fold it in, fold over the top, and you've got this. The envelope is big enough to hold your chunky card. Now we get to come to my favorite, and in my opinion, the one that takes the absolute least amount of time. I'm going to be using my envelope punch board. So we've got the A2 size is right here, and it says to use an 8 1/8 by 8 1/8. But if you want to make it slightly bigger, you can go 4 1/2 by 6, and that's 8 1/2 by 8 1/2. And that usually works just fine for me. So that's the size I'm going to be using, I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to go ahead and cut this down, cut off 2 1/2 inches. That will make this an 8 1/2 by 8 1/2 piece of cardstock. And I do like using cardstock for a lot of my envelopes. This is Recollections, just general weight. I believe it's like the 80 pound. The next part it shows on here for that size card is to score it at 3 3/4. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to line up the corner over here at 3 3/4. And I love that the markings are so bright. It's a big enough contrast that you can actually see them. Some of the other tools that I've got, I really can't see them unless I pull it close up to me. So what I did, I talked through that, sorry about that. Line it up, you punch it, and then you score it. There is this little score line here. This has only got one scoring groove, so you can't mess up on this at all. Then you line up this little piece here, this little arrow and that little, I don't know, little flap with the line that you just scored. You line it up, you punch, and score again. Make sure you actually go in the groove, unlike what I did. You turn it, and you do it again. The second turn should line up again at 3 3/4. Punch, and score, and then turn it again, and punch, and score. And now you've got perfect size envelope. Another nice feature that this punch board has is this piece on this side. This is the part where you can round your corners to give it a more polished look. You saw that we didn't have anything like that on the other unless I took out my crocodile. So this has got a built-in corner rounder. And other than the little pieces of cardstock all over the place, you could sit on the couch and make these basically all day. Just fold them down. Again on those score lines. And we'll do the same thing, the same test with this one. Put it in there. It fits great. I'm going to go ahead and fold in the sides, fold up the top, fold down the bottom, and again we've got another envelope that we can use to mail out a chunky card. So I have to say this is my favorite method. Again, it's because I've got the tool for the job. And I have thought about getting a couple of other of the We Are Memory Keepers punch boards because of the different things that they can do. Pretty much everything you can do with a punch board, you can do without it. However, it does take longer, and it takes more thought process to get it done. You saw me struggle a little bit with the other methods, and this one is a breeze. This one has got a ton of different measurements for different size envelopes that you can make. And there's a smaller version that has even more. So this one will make an envelope for a card that is 2 by 3 1/2, as the smallest and as large as 6 by 8.5. So you've got a very large range of what size cards you can make with this. So I hope that this video was helpful. This was a video that I did specifically because a friend of mine was asking me, how do you mail a chunky card? Because she was struggling with that. She's been making some cards and she made one that was a little bit bigger than what she probably expected, and is trying to mail it and wound up needing to go to the store and get a bubble wrap envelope in order to mail it out, which does protect it better, and that is a great option. But if you don't have that as an option, this is one way that can work for you. And to protect any kind of embellishments or anything on the inside of the card, if you want to do that, you could always put an extra piece of cardstock in there over the top of it when it's in the envelope. So again, I hope that this was helpful for you. Here are a couple more videos that I know you'll enjoy. Thanks for watching, and remember, if I can make it, you can too. See you next time.